Welcome to what is the first Whale Sanctuary Project live webinar of 2021. And it is my great honor to have Senator Dan Christmas from Nova Scotia as our guest. But in a moment, I will introduce you to Senator Christmas. But first, I would like to begin by acknowledging Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. So before I welcome Senator Christmas, I'd like to tell you a little bit about him. Senator Dan Christmas is a member of the Mi'kmaq Nation of Nova Scotia, who was born in Sydney and raised in Membertou. He is the son of Augustus and Beulah Christmas and the grandson of the late Membertou chief Ben Christmas, a man who fought hard to defeat the Canadian government's centralization plan, a plan that essentially amounted to cultural genocide for the people. Senator Christmas is a business and cultural leader who, along with others, transformed the community of Membertou into an economic powerhouse and now one of the most successful First Nations in Canada. And I had the great pleasure of visiting Membertou a couple of years ago, and it was truly impressive. After serving 5 years as the band manager for the community of Membertou, Senator Christmas worked for the Union of Nova Scotia Indians for 15 years, the last 10 as its director. He was actively involved in the recognition and implementation of Mi'kmaq, Aboriginal, and treaty rights in Nova Scotia, and beginning in 1997, held the position of senior advisor to the Mi'kmaq community of Membertou for over 20 years. In 2016, Dan Christmas became the first Mi'kmaq senator to be appointed to the Senate of Canada, and he currently serves on the Standing Senate Committee on Fisheries and Oceans and the Standing Senate Committee on Aboriginal Affairs as its chair. Senator Christmas received a diploma from University College of Cape Breton in '76 and was awarded an honorary Doctor of Laws degree from Dalhousie. And he also holds an honorary Doctor of Civil Law degree from St. Mary's University. And in 2008, he was the recipient of the National Excellence in Aboriginal Leadership Award from the Aboriginal Financial Officers Association of Canada. And finally, in 2016, he was awarded an honorary diploma from the Nova Scotia Community College. Now, I first met Dan Christmas in Ottawa in March of 2017. And that was during the hearings of S203, the Ending of Captivity of Whales and Dolphins Act, which eventually became law in 2019. And in 2019, Senator Christmas appeared at the committee hearings on S203 to articulate a way of looking at this whole issue of dolphin and whale captivity that, to me, to this day, is the most poignant and the most right-headed expression of how we should be relating to the captive whales who are actually at the center of this whole issue. So with that, I'd like to welcome Dan Christmas. Welcome.
Thank you, Laurie. Thank you for the kind introduction.
Well, I'd like to begin where I just left off. You spoke eloquently at that committee hearing about whales and their families, saying that, if you had the opportunity to ask the very animals at the center of this issue, what you would ask them a key question. So tell everyone, what was that question and what led you to think about this?
Well, actually, Laurie, it was out of sheer frustration. I was just a new senator. I was only in the Senate for a few months. And I think this bill, S203, was probably the first one I studied. So being a new senator, I was being respectful, and I'm listening to this ongoing debate for weeks between those who supported the bill and those who didn't agree with any of the bill at all. And it was very intense. There was raised voices. There were. I thought at one meeting that we need to call in the security. Of course, this is my first experience in the Senate committee. And after a while, I was starting to get very confused. I was starting to say, well, who's right? I mean, are these individuals who are witnesses before the committee? Are they telling the truth? Because we had those who were strongly opposed to the legislation, and equally we had people who very strongly believed that we were doing the right thing. And I think after one of those exchanges in the Senate committee, um, uh, us as members of the committee have opportunities to ask questions of the witnesses. And it came to me to ask question. And I was so overwhelmed and frustrated. I remember out of exasperation, I sort of said, you know, I wish we had the whales here tonight so we can ask them, what do they think? And I could tell the looks of surprise in the committee because I just sort of blurted it out. I didn't, perhaps I was thinking it to myself. I didn't mean to say it out loud, but it came from my heart. I've heard the testimonies, I've heard the witnesses, two opposite ends of the issue, diametrically opposed. And it seemed to me at least, we were talking about someone who wasn't there. I had the feeling that we were talking about children, but the children had no voice, had no say. Sometimes maybe it happens at the kitchen table. Two parents talk about the welfare of the children, and children have no say. But I remember thinking to myself, I wish the technology was available, that we could bring those witnesses in, probably Zoom them in, whatever, and ask them. And if we had the technology to speak to them in their languages and for them to respond to us in their languages and translate them, we would know. We would know what is really the best thing for them. And I remember thinking to myself, it is not just for them, it's also for their families. It's also for, in my mind, I was thinking it's also for their communities. And they have relations. I mean, there's all different species of whales and tortoises and dolphins. And so that was the point of frustration when I finally said, let's invite the whales here tonight and let's ask them the question and let's see what they would say. And I knew that was an awkward point for the committee, but that was honestly how I felt at that moment.
Well, you know, when you said that, and I think you said it in this way, you said, I would ask the whales what is best for your family.
Mm.
And I thought, gee, here we are. We're humans, we're primates sitting around a table and negotiating the lives of these other beings on both sides, fighting to the death, right? And yet the person who's at the center of this is not at the table.
Right.
And exactly. And that just cut through everything, what you said, because it just stopped everyone in their tracks, because really, this is really what it's about. It's not about us, it's about the whales and what's best for them. And if only we could ask them. And what we try to do, right, is try to get into their minds, and everyone is convinced that they know what's best for them without asking them.
And that was the dilemma that we were talking over. Obviously, a very intelligent species, as if we knew best. And I found that very strange. I grew up in a different culture than most people. I grew up in the Mi'kmaq community, and I remember as as a little child, visiting my grandmother's home in a community called Baudelaire, which is in a very rural area. And I used to remember hearing these wonderful, beautiful stories of these people that lived in the forest. And I used to hear about their how intelligent they were, how shrewd they could be, how they provided for their own families, and I heard about their humor as well. I heard some funny stories about these people, and the people called them Wysies, and I didn't know for the longest time. I'm just a child, who these Wysies were, because in my mind I thought they were another people like us, like Mi'kmaq, but they lived in the forest. But it took me a few years. But finally, probably when I learned some English, I realized that these Wysies were all the species of animals who lived in the forest.
Mm.
And I heard all these stories in my childhood as if they were real persons, that they had intelligence, they had feelings, they had families, they loved and they hated and they tried to survive. And so that was my first impression about who Wysies or animals were. And I got the impression that there were tribes of different animals or species, I suppose, but that they were equal to us. They were no less. They had spirits like us. They had names. They had families. And of course, they had their own challenges. So when I grew up in my community, that's how I came to view all the created world around us, that it was, we were not superior to them. In fact, if it wasn't for them, we as Mi'kmaq would not have survived. So we had a great deal of respect and honor for them for what they provided us as a people. So that was a perspective that I brought to the table. And when I finally asked the whales, I honestly meant that, because I really thought that you could go and we should, that we should go and find out from them that if they had a voice, what would they say? And that was the question that was on my mind that morning, or that evening, I should say.
I can only feel that you were so fortunate to grow up that way, because you grew up already viewing other animals in a way that most people still can't get to. You know, most people grow up, they like animals. And in fact, there's some research that shows that little kids really, they see animals that way. And then what happens is it gets enculturated out of them.
Mm.
And so they end up seeing animals as objects, as property, as resources, products, etc. And how to get back to that view of them as real persons. And I know that this is not rhetoric for you, this is real. And how to get to that place is very difficult when you grow up with everyone telling you that other animals are objects. And to grow up already with that wisdom of seeing the other animals as simply other nations, other people with their own lives to lead is something that's very, very, it's a blessing, really. It is.
It took me a while to realize that was still embedded in my mind and heart. At that committee meeting, obviously it came out, but I unconsciously was aware of that. Unaware of it. I didn't realize I had that worldview until it came out. And I suddenly realized by the reaction of others that this was a huge surprise. But you're
Yes.
perfectly correct, Lori. I mean, it's the difference between treating animals, as you mentioned, as things or objects or property, or if you honestly believe that they're persons.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look carefully, if you listen carefully, they have all the attributes of personhood. I mean, they have intelligence, they have laughter, they have humor. Just watch a pair of crows play in the snow sometimes and rolling down
Yeah.
a snow hill. I mean, that they're having fun, or
Yeah.
watch a pair of eagles fly through endless miles of air as if it was nothing. I mean, it's amazing. So
Mhm.
I think all we have to do sometimes is just look and see, and we will learn.
Look. And I think sometimes it's not that unclear what's best for someone who happens to be a member of another species. We just have to open ourselves up to realizing that the answer may be something that we don't want it to be, which is what's best is to be able to just live their lives. And the fact that you grew up with personhood uh, as a central theme of how you relate to the other animals is just, as I said, you're very fortunate to have grown up with that sentiment. Um, you recently shared with me some beautiful artwork by your late wife, Dozie, and she was a celebrated artist throughout Canada and the United States. And what I'd like to do for the audience here is to share my screen and share this very special piece, which depicts the Mi'kmaq cultural hero Kluskap as he is carried across the ocean by Baduk, the whale. And I practiced all morning to say those correctly. I hope they're close to. um, I hope everyone can see this beautiful, beautiful acrylic painting. It is at Doze's Native Art Gallery in Member 2. And I'm so honored that you're sharing this with us, Dan. And it, depicts Gluskap, who you will tell us who this is soon, leaving the people on the back of a whale, Baruch. And superimposed on this painting is this petroglyph in it's an actual petroglyph of that tale from the Maritimes, which Dose superimposed upon her painting. So who was Gluskap and what was his relationship to Baruch? And what is the cultural importance of these figures?
Well, Glooskap, there's numerous stories, or some people call them legends, about Glooskap, who was with us before Europeans arrived on the continent. And it is said that Glooskap was created by the Creator, and in turn, he had taught the Mi'kmaq the skills of survival in this land. It is said that he had his lodge in Bloomington in the Bay of Fundy. And from there, he cared for all the Wabanaki peoples, and that includes the Maliseet, the Mi'kmaq, the Penobscot, the Passamaquoddies. Um, and in this particular painting, my wife was a storyteller by heart. She just loved telling stories. And I think the legacy of her career was that she did 32 of these stories, and she put them to paint, and she used acrylics with airbrush. So in this particular painting, one of the stories she had read and heard about was before colonization started, Glooskap had told the Wabanaki people that he was going to leave, but that he would return again sometime in the future when he was needed again. And you'll see in this painting, you see two petroglyphs in the foreground. And these are basically rock drawings that were found at Keshemakujik National Park in Nova Scotia. The top figure is a petroglyph of a man, and you can tell he's a leader because you can see at the top of his head he has feathers, and that is how Mi'kmaq leaders designated their leadership. And then you'll see that he is sitting on a whale, and you'll see again in Keshemakujik we have these petroglyphs. These are actual petroglyphs you can see. Of a rock drawing of a whale. And why we know it's a whale? Because we can see the spout. We can see him breathing. And so when Glooskap was about to leave our people, he asked for the whale to come to him. And in one of the legends I read, Glooskap calls the whale grandfather, which is a term of great respect and honor. And the whale calls Glooskap grandson. So
Mhm.
you can feel the, the place of honor and relationship between the two. And Glooskap asks Buddha if he could um, basically be his transportation to go west.
Mhm.
And so Buddha and Glooskap, and there's a bit of a story because Buddha couldn't get close enough to the shore, and finally he sort of beaches himself, and then with Glooskap's help, he's managed to free him from the beach, and he mounts on Buddha's back, and he's gone. So this painting was Duce's effort to capture that story, both in terms of history, meaning that using these ancient rock drawings, but also try to communicate to today the special relationship that existed between Glooskap and Buddha, and the immense amount of respect, I think, that were between us as humans, and to the point where we revered whales. And there's numerous stories about whales in the Mi'kmaq, numerous. Another story is that the reason that we have the high tides in the Bay of Fundy is because the whales are slapping their tails.
Oh, I
So,
love that.
so there's numerous stories, and so the relationship is one truly of respect, um, of an ancient one, I think, because I think that's what Glooskap called Buddha, grandfather, that they were here a long time, maybe a lot longer than the Mi'kmaq. And that's probably the reason why Glooskap has such respect for him. But you'll also hear many legends of Glooskap riding the back of whales as his transportation to different parts of the world.
Well, it's the tale has, I mean, it rings so true in the sense that there is a sort of an inherent knowledge that the whales have been here a lot longer than we have, and that, we have a lot to learn from them. You mentioned that part of this tradition is that Glooskap would come back one day. Is there a concept or an idea about when that would be, or what would have to happen for that to occur?
Well, the only recollections I have of those stories was that he promised he would come back when his people would need him.
Mhm.
Now, we don't
Mhm.
know what he was referring to. He did tell the Mi'kmaq, at least, um, that the white man was going to arrive in his land, and that was one of the reasons why he had to leave.
Mm.
But um, and this is just me speculating. Here I'm sitting in 2021, um, and I wonder if that crisis is climate change. That if our world is going to be so negatively impacted that our own survival is going to be at stake, will that be the time when Glooskap will have to return? But this is just me. This is just me thinking out loud and speculating. I don't know if that is the reason, but it reflects the hope that he will definitely return at some point in the future. And I wonder, again, me speculating, that he may arrive. He may arrive in a whale on a whale.
You know, I mean, I think that climate change is obviously the biggest threat that we all face. So it is, we are going to need help, we are most certainly going to need help dealing with climate change, and actually finding the wisdom to deal with it, not just the technology, but the wisdom to confront this issue. I love the way she created this, almost looks like electricity coming out of the whale. It just gives it so much energy, and the beautiful bird. So thank you very much for sharing this.
Oh, thank you very much. And if any of our listeners want to see more of Duze's work, she does have all 32 of her Glooskap pieces on exhibit right now at the Friends United Center in Cleveland, Richmond County here in Cape Breton.
And if anybody, wants to go online to see her work or get in touch with me to ask Dan how to do that, please feel free, because it is work that you need to see. I know that you've been a proponent of the Whale Sanctuary Project for a long time, and we're honored by that. I wonder if you could tell me a little bit about what you thought when you first heard about our project. Did you think we were crazy?
Well, when I first heard about the idea of a whale sanctuary, I remember the relief, because I was thinking that these aquariums were the only option for, at least for those cetaceans who were injured and couldn't survive in the wild. And one of the arguments, of course, that was made that justified their existence. And I was thinking, what a horrible way to exist, is to be not only injured and wounded, but also be in captivity. And then when you and your colleagues came to committee and proposed the idea of a whale sanctuary, and being an idea that was never tried before, that this was a brand new idea, I was excited. Thought to myself, wow, this would be really the respectful way of caring for those creatures who were unable to do so themselves. And as I began to listen to the idea more and more and more about how a significant area of the ocean would be used to allow these creatures to be safe and looked after, I was sitting at the time next to Senator Tom McGuinness, who is also from Nova Scotia. In fact, he lives in Sheet Harbor. And I remember turning to Senator Tom and telling him, Tom, we have to get this in Nova Scotia. And he laughed and he nodded. He said, Dan, yeah, can't you imagine Nova Scotia having the first whale sanctuary in the world? I mean, just think of the honor that would give us as Nova Scotians. And we're so close to the ocean. We're so close to fish, and the Mi'kmaq themselves are coastal people. It just rang so true. It just resonated perfectly with me. And of course, subsequent to the passing of the act, we began to have discussions. I knew that there were other competing sites in the world, on the west coast of North America, for instance. And I thought the chances of that project landing here in the east coast of Nova Scotia, I thought we had a very slim chance, but that didn't stop us. I mean, I remember telling other Mi'kmaq people here in the province that they should look at this and see if there's a way that we can help move it along, and see if we can get some support, and to talk to our leadership, talk to the chiefs. And I remember talking to a lot of people and pushing it, but I honestly, Lori, I thought it was a long shot.
Yeah.
And then when I heard rumblings that there was a site in Nova Scotia seriously being considered, it made my heart race for. And then when the final announcement came, I was just so joyful, not only for Nova Scotians, but I was joyful for those whales and for those dolphins and those cetaceans who have a brand new home where they could be looked after with love and respect and with some dignity, finally. And that was the relief I remember feeling. So I'm so thankful for the whale sanctuary coming to Nova Scotia. I know we have a lot of work to go, but
Oh, sure. But thank you. I mean, we're making such progress. And I know the very first time I came to Nova Scotia, I met up with Catherine Kinsman, who who's a beluga whale specialist. And the first thing we did is we met with Chief Terry, Chief Terry Paul, in Dartmouth, and proposed the idea to him, because we felt that, well, if it's okay with him, then it's probably okay to do this. And then we, after that, over the next couple of years, we went up and down the coast. And the thing that really, and I have to say, we've never had meetings with members of Mi'kmaq that were not positive and supporting. But we chose, Port Hilford, as you know, not just because it's a big, beautiful bay, which it is, but the people there and the community who from the get-go were so, just like you said, I think their hearts were racing. They were saying, oh my God, can it be that this could be here? And so, they felt that excitement, you felt it, and we are well on our way. So one of the things that I know that we are concerned about from our point of view is making sure that this whale sanctuary in Port Hilford plays a role in Mi'kmaq culture, has relevance to the people. And I'm just going to ask you, what are some of the ways that you think we could engage with the Mi'kmaq community so that this project is something that is treasured and respected by the Mi'kmaq people?
Well, I think one of the opportunities here, Lori, is to rebuild that relationship that the Mi'kmaq had with whales. Um, you look into our stories and legends, it's pretty obvious that
Yeah.
that relationship was there, that the whale family was highly regarded, and they were held with a great deal of honor and respect.
Yeah.
So I think this whale sanctuary, being right here in Nova Scotia, right off our coastline, I think there's an opportunity to help not only our elders, but also our children, to learn once again about the stories, to learn once again about the relationship, to learn once again about who they are. I think we've forgotten who they are as as people, as persons, and to reconnect with that relationship again. So I think there's an opportunity to bring something back from the past that was lost, and hopefully it won't just remain with us as Mi'kmaq. That hopefully, we as Mi'kmaq people can also share that with
Yes.
others as well. That others will come to Nova Scotia and see these beautiful creatures, and we can share the stories, the relationship, the honor and respect we have for these animals. So, and likewise, I think they themselves will have a lot to offer to us. I think we'll have to be careful. We have to listen carefully to what they will teach us, and I'm sure they'll teach us a lot. It's a brand new experience for all of us, but I think they being here so long on this continent and in this ocean, I mean, that there's probably a treasure trove of knowledge that they will share with us and teach us as well. So I'm excited about that part as well.
Yes, oh, that's wonderful. And I look forward to, especially engaging the students, the kids, the children, the new generation. So as you said, we can, or rather we can play some small role in helping them to understand who whales are and why they need to be in the ocean and not somewhere else. And so that would be a great honor. My final question to you is, what do you see going forward as the biggest challenge for Nova Scotia and Canada in protecting animals and nature? That's a big, big, big question, but maybe you could give us a little.
Well, one of the advantages I have as sitting as a senator is I get to see the nation as a whole, and I get to hear different concerns from different parts of our great nation. And most recently, Senator Murray Sinclair, who just retired from the Senate after 5 outstanding years of service, he was the original sponsor of the of Bill S-203.
That's right.
He had introduced a bill in Parliament, and he wanted to have this very same principle of not putting into captivity other species. And he had proposed that we offer the same kind of protection to great apes and elephants, who unfortunately are behind bars as well. Whales were in small aquariums or small swimming tanks, but the same thing also applies to great apes and elephants. And so this particular bill, Marie now has asked another Indigenous senator from out west, Senator Marty Klein, to sponsor this bill in the Senate. It's called the Jane Goodall Act. So this is going to begin the long journey through Parliament as well. I know the whales in captivity one had a long journey, and I suspect this one will. But if we are able to articulate the respect that we think these species should have as well, that they shouldn't be behind bars, and maybe we'll find other sanctuaries for those of their species that need to be cared for, unfortunately. But I think that's the next step. And it just logically follows from making illegal the captivity of whales.
I think, this whole movement of sanctuary for other animals is a way of giving back for what we've taken from them, and it's restitution, it's reconciliation. It is a way of healing ourselves by getting right with these other animals and actually having a respectful relationship with them, rather than an exploitive one. So it helps everybody. It makes everybody's heart feel good, and Canada is ahead in the world, is a leader in our relationship to whales and dolphins. And there's just your heads and tails above the United States, I can tell you that much.
We just passed a similar act, so it's happening. It's
Yeah,
happening.
it's happening. So it's wonderful. Well, let me turn to some Q&A here, some questions, because we have a lot of them. And it says, it's by David. He says, what is a good way to communicate with whales, with being anthropocentric in the listening and knowing? I guess he's trying to say, how can we really listen or hear or see them without being so in ourselves, so anthropocentric?
Yes. I think the key there, David, would be to focus our energy in understanding their language. So it takes us out of ourselves and try to put our minds into their minds and to listen carefully to what they're saying. And I understand that there's individuals who study whales who are beginning to discern that they have a distinct language and that they speak to others and they speak perhaps to ourselves. And I hope we focus on that we begin to learn the other languages of other species. And I think that will take us out of ourselves. And then we will begin to realize that they indeed have their own voices and that we should listen to them.
Yes, yes. And I think also they tell us how they feel with other ways in terms of their health, how they act, and their behavior, and
So for instance, Laurie, imagine if we could understand what they were saying, what they would tell us about climate change.
I'm not sure we'd want to know. I think it would be a rude awakening for our species.
Yes.
What do you think?
Oh, I mean, they've lived on this planet for millions of years, perhaps, and for them to have an opinion and tell us what's happening on the Earth now and to their oceans. It's their oceans, not ours. What's happening there, we need to hear. And this would be, I think, in my mind, an expert witness who could tell us what's happening and what we need to do about it. So, but again, it's moving out of ourselves and moving into them and having them voice what they see.
Yes. Oh, here's an interesting one. Are you afraid, this is from Donna, are you afraid that if one species of animal has more rights or is starting to gain rights, that it will open the floodgates for other species?
Yeah, that's the same question they ask about indigenous people too. If you recognize the right, what happens to all the other tribes in Canada? Um, I don't think it's really. It reminds me of that commercial about the fellow having one chip, and if I give you this one, then everyone else will want a chip, right?
Yeah. Right.
Uh, but maybe that's the wrong way to see it. Maybe what we need to think about is what's best for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
So what's best for cetaceans may indeed be best for other species as well.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe indeed for what we do with cetaceans may also perhaps even save our own species. So I think we have to think of the bigger picture that if we are able to start a chain reaction in one spot, is it possible that it could spread out and impact others the same way, in a good way, and benefit all of us, not just one? So that's the way I tend to look at things. I mean, it's the same thing with Indigenous people. If Indigenous people in one part of the world achieve some degree of success and prosperity, that isn't that great for all of us? And if other Indigenous First Nations achieve a degree of prosperity and good health, isn't that great for them and for us? So it's the same thing with other species of living things on the earth.
Mm-hmm.
If we can find the way to look after them, maybe in the end they'll look after us.
This is from Harley, who says, thank you, Senator Christmas, for all that you do, for being the voice for these beings. And as you say, so many look at things and so many look at them and see something to control or sell, but you're looking at them in another way. We can only surmise so much in terms of what is better for another species based on our existing knowledge of that species. But I think this is not a question so much as what Parlay is saying is we have a pretty good idea, no, of what a beluga whale would want for her family. Maybe we don't know everything, but I think that there's enough shared experience that if a mother beluga whale wants her children to be safe and free, that is not a crazy idea that goes beyond anything that we might know about these animals. Would you think?
Oh, for sure. I mean, sometimes what's not so common anymore is common sense. And so
Mm-hmm.
if you think about what we uh, as mammals, as human beings, as mammals, the things that we need, that we need clean water and good food, we need safety, we need security, we need health. Doesn't it make sense that other mammals need the same things?
Yeah.
Maybe they have different tastes, or maybe they have different wants or needs, but the basic needs, I think, are the same. So I think that was one of the reasons why Mi'kmaq or other indigenous people bonded with other living things, because we saw a commonness, a common link between all of us. And we knew we had to share this one world. We couldn't, just take everything for ourselves. We had to make sure that other species survived as well. So I think it just comes down to common sense.
It is common sense. Well, one of the questions here from Erica is how will the whale sanctuary differ from aquariums? And just to very briefly respond to that, I think that in terms of the context of everything that Dan, you and I have been talking about, again, this is about giving back what they need to thrive, what was theirs to begin with. And aquariums It really isn't about the animals, it's about the visitors. And everything is maximized to make sure that people keep coming to see these animals and paying to see them, not to put too fine a point on it. But in an authentic sanctuary, again, this is a real attempt to return these people, these whales, to what is theirs and what their brain and their body needs to thrive. So when they feel the ocean, when they have the ability to make choices about what they do on a daily basis, that there will be something that reawakens in them. Just as we see with elephants and other animals, big cats who are given the opportunity to actually have lives, they flourish. It's not that every problem goes away overnight, but they're at least given an opportunity, like you and I have, to flourish, to thrive, to do what we want to do on a day-to-day basis as autonomous beings. And I think that the authentic sanctuaries have the animals as the priority, and not the other way around. And it's also a way that generations of children can learn a new way of relating to these animals, just as you said. Well, I think we've kind of covered this. What role, this is from Olivia, what role do you believe a whale sanctuary would play in educating people about traditional relationships across species? Modern marine parks tend to present a very one-sided view of human relationships with animals. And do you think that a sanctuary could be successful in putting forth a more three-dimensional, richer view?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I remember one of the arguments that was made for aquariums was its educational value, that the only way that we could learn about a species of cetaceans is to see them in an aquarium, period.
Yeah.
Because I know, just myself as a Nova Scotian, here in the beautiful Unama'ki, Cape Breton, one of the frequent things we do during the summer is take whale cruises. And we go out and we get to see pilot whales. I've seen a right whale one time on a whale cruise.
Really? Oh, wow.
Um, and you can't tell me that there is no educational value in seeing these beautiful creatures in their natural habitat. To actually see them in their own habitat. I've seen pilot whales look like they were playing. They were just so joyful, jumping. They would come to the boat and you could almost pet them. I mean, it was incredible, the joy these animals had. And to allow those who are unable to survive in the wild to live in a sanctuary where they can continue with that freedom, and to allow us, and I think a sanctuary is a better place to learn because you learn truly in their own environment.
That's right.
And we could teach people. We could teach people about them. And us as Mi'kmaq, well, we'd love to be there as well to teach them about our relationship with the whales. But
Yes.
I think sanctuaries have an equal and maybe even a better opportunity to teach others about whales than aquariums.
Well, we say it's always better to teach authentically from nature. If you really want to know who an animal is, look at them, as you said, when you went whale watching. Oh my God, the exuberance, right? I know the first time I ever saw a dolphin outside of a tank, I'll never forget that, doing some field work off of Georgia. And I thought, oh, that's a dolphin. Not, so that's what it means to be a free dolphin. Because the individuals I was working with were not, and they were different animals. And the same thing when I saw orcas in the wild. I mean, they're different animals. So there really is, if you want children to know who other animals are, then you have to present them authentically.
Yes.
Right. One question is, what do you recommend for biology students who would love to work with whales?
Well, the thing I worry about, Laurie, is still a lot of our educational institutions, universities, still teach biology of living things as objects. I mean, that's important. I get that you need to understand that, but always try to keep your mind open, that you're studying persons, that you're studying living beings that have been here millions of years, and try to come to an understanding that they too have their purpose in life. They too have their way of living. They too have their families. They too want to live and survive and thrive just like us.
Mhm.
So I don't know if they teach any courses about the personhood of whales or dolphins or porpoises. I don't know. Maybe you need to bring in some elders to be able to teach that. But I think our science sometimes is limited and not bring in that other part of learning, that we should look at living things as our brothers and sisters because they truly are.
Mhm. And that being a scientist doesn't mean that you disregard the respect that you have for the animals that you're studying. It actually means just the opposite, that it enhances your science by really being able to relate to these animals in a full way. Um, uh,
Right? That would be a big advantage. I think to me, the ideal world would be an indigenous person who's also a biologist in a certain species, that they bring the best of both worlds into it. But I think as well, I think scientists can also learn as well the other way and learn the indigenous way of knowing as well. We call it two wide seeing in Nova Scotia.
like seeing, yes.
We apply two wide seeing, meaning we apply the best of the science world, the Western science world, and we apply the best of traditional ecological knowledge, or TEK, and combine both eyes, and we see more clearly.
I think that is a perfect way to end this webinar. And, I couldn't ask for a better way to give people something to really think about. And I have come across two-eyed seeing. And as a scientist, it is so intriguing. And we might call it different things, but it is about the fact that there is no conflict between science and all the other ways of thinking.
Correct.
And in fact, they're complementary. And Dan, I want to thank you so much for this wonderful conversation. It's just been a pleasure and an honor.
Well, thank you, Laurie. It was a pleasure to launch this webinar, series of webinars, and I wish you and your colleagues and all those who share your interests all the best. And I'm so glad to have the sanctuary in Nova Scotia.
Well, we are too, and we look forward to seeing you in person soon.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining us, and thank you again, Dan. Bye-bye.